News Radio 700 WLW.
You know, we have lost, I think, in large part, and we're starting to get it back. We as a society, we're starting to get it back. I think we as a society in large part have lost our ability to laugh. We're much more serious today than we were certainly 18 months ago. We seem to be offended by everything. And it doesn't seem like it's an easy place, America, the world, anywhere, an easy place to laugh anymore. But it turns out laughing is an elixir. It's a tonic. It's an aphrodisiac for life. And now there is several studies, or there is several studies, there are in bad English classes, there are several studies that make that make us understand a little bit more what laughter is all about, how it can trigger the activation of neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, and not only that, those control moods. And so if you find yourself in a bad mood, it used to be, well, let's see if we can't figure out a way to laugh or have fun with this, as opposed to being so serious. Used to be that you could. Now, maybe not so much. Now it works, certainly. I mean, if you're not in the office, you're still working remotely, tough thing to do. Even if you are in the office, nobody's sure about their footing anymore there. What do you do? How do you do something that's so important to you, your health and your life? How do you do that in the world that we live in right now? I hope we get an answer to this now. I think we will. Michael Cups is with a group called ActiveOps. ActiveOps. He's at ActiveOps.com. And is going to weigh in on this right now here on 700 WLW. And Michael, how are you on this glorious Saturday?
I'm wonderful, Ken. Thank you so much for having me. It's a beautiful day in North Texas, so pleased to talk to you.
Great. Are you laughing today?
I have been laughing today. I've been working with a colleague on a few things, and we've enjoyed our time.
What makes you laugh? I'm just interested because people have different things that make them laugh. People have different things that are humorous. What gets you a good laugh anymore?
You know, it's really laughing at real life situations, and largely that's laughing at myself. That often comes into play, but it's not so much the forced laughter that you see, but it's just situations and timing. And as you mentioned, everybody's taking themselves so seriously these days. It's just nice to stop and smile, you know. That.
How did we get here, Michael? How did we get to this point where it seems like everything that's out there offends somebody? So in essence, we're all offended by something. So if you start laughing at something, chances are someone's been offended by it, and all of a sudden you're laughing, and the next thing you know, you're in an HR office. How did we get to this point?
That's right. You know, it's interesting. We've all spent the last 13, 14, 18 months, like you said, put in our caves, if you will. We were all forced home, and we had to figure out life in a new way without that tactile sense of interacting with people face to face, and that leads to us staring at our screens too long. It leads to us, you know, reading too much into things on the news or on the screen we look at, and maybe we start guessing too much. Maybe our imagination runs a little wild because we're bored, and then all of a sudden we're offended by other things because you see so many opportunities for people to pounce on and put comments in and things online that maybe we just kind of start believing what we're reading, even though it's an opinion of somebody maybe in Iowa that doesn't fit your narrative, but we all start seeing it and believing it. And so that's what we've been looking at for 18 months, Ken, is that screen. Right?
Sure. Social media knows no nuance. It doesn't know tone. It doesn't know really anything. Anything that's printed that's funny is never, ever as funny as something that's said verbally. And when somebody says something verbally, and we're not talking about, you know, jokes about body parts and jokes at other people's expense, we're talking about something that could be humorous. Anything that's spoken is infinitely more entertaining than something that's read. And I think part of the problem is people, as you say, get so consumed about what they read on Twitter, and 80% of the American public doesn't use Twitter. 10% of the people that use Twitter actually have things on Twitter. So to me, I think a lot of it is that we've become so isolated and so victims of whatever shows up on our smartphone that we've forgotten that life, in large part, is interacting with people.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ken. And if you go back to your first question, I didn't answer it. We grew up knowing about physical comedy, and you're actually seeing something happen in addition to the narrative that's going along with it, the words used, and the physical comedy. We've had great acts along the years that we all laugh at, and that physical nature of it does bring an element that just can't be replicated online.
Yeah. Yeah. How does an employer who wants to, generate as much of his or her product as possible, how does an employer who wants his or her employees to be as productive as possible, how does an employer who understands that the workforce is vastly different, particularly when we're talking about things that make people laugh and perhaps some sort of humor that others would find offensive, how do they foster this? Because it's shown here that laughter can trigger things like dopamine and serotonin. Those are mood-boosting hormones. In a lot of ways, they're both kinds of things that help with stress and inflammation inside the body. How does someone that runs a company or is responsible for those running a company, how do they foster that attitude, which I think most companies, larger ones especially, have gotten away from?
That's a great question, Ken. And I think there's two things. First is to understand that laughter and humor can be another team member of the team. So, humor in and of itself helps you break down the barrier, the boredom barrier, if you will. And so we are in a world now where we're looking at the screen so often, and we're doing the same applications, maybe email, et cetera, so often. These repetitive tasks lead to mundane hours, which leads to bored days. And so if we can break that down and view humor as another team member, then we have an opportunity to do that. Now, ActiveOps has a capability in our software to measure that screen time, measure application usage, et cetera. So that gives the manager an opportunity to have that transparency, which leads us to the next thing they should be aware of is timing, right? So you can't force this. It has to be authentic, and the timing is important. And timing could mean individual interventions or pulse breaks, as I would like to call them. Just as a nurse would come around and take your pulse in the hospital, managers need to be taking pulse of their employees from time to time. And so the timing matters, and that transparency matters when you can tell when your employee has been spending too much time on one thing, too much time looking at the screen, and interject that coaching opportunity and interject humor where you can to make that experience better. The third thing is authenticity. I mean, I think we've all seen The Office and Michael Scott, and there's such forced humor in those, and it just doesn't go well. It doesn't go well on the screen, and it doesn't go well in person. So it's an important thing to have that authenticity, so you can't force it. So it's important for the managers, in addition to being aware of when and where, whether it's a team meeting or one-on-one, you have to have that authenticity about real things. So, the first thing they could do is laugh about themselves, because that's typically a safe opportunity. You're not criticizing anybody else. You're laughing at something you did. But in business, there's all kinds of opportunities to make it real. It could be what a customer said to one of your agents over time, or, autocorrect is one of those things that creates a lot of opportunities to laugh at ourselves. So those are just some examples, Kim, that I think that managers need to be aware of: the timing, the location, the situation, and then it's got to be natural.
Yeah. I worked for a guy once who was very good at taking what he called the temperature of the room. He wasn't very good at anything else, but he could take the temperature of the room to see exactly, what was bugging people and what was turning them on and things like that. But I think, when we talk about what you and I have been talking about here for the last few minutes, I think what we're really talking about is culture. And I think there has to be some sort of mandate, edict, maybe with a velvet hammer from the top to all the middle managers and everybody else that's in charge of running a business or a company. Now, look, we want to make this a fun place to work. There are 9 million unfilled jobs in this country, and there are people who have just gone through a pandemic who have decided, I don't want to do this anymore. I want something else that fits my lifestyle a little bit better. And invariably, people want more of a laid-back atmosphere, not necessarily because they don't want to do as much, but they don't want the intensity of what their job is. That's a broad brush, I understand it, but I think it applies to a lot of people under the age of 40. And I think that good managers will realize that, because, Michael, all of these unfilled jobs and people quitting and leaving good jobs, there's got to be a message in that, right?
Oh, absolutely, and the Great Resignation is real. People are changing jobs quickly because they don't necessarily have to worry about where they live in relationship to the office they're going into, because they have a laptop and now they're automatically connected to the office. So focusing on culture is absolutely paramount for companies, and laughter is just one example of that. But that culture, I mean, if laughter brings us together, it builds the team, it bonds teams. You rarely hear people speak badly of a team that they had fun in doing the work with, no matter what the work. So that laughter just brings us together. It also just boosts focus and recharge. So how many times have we just been so bored with something, the minute something takes our attention away and makes us smile, we're more focused and we can do that job better. And then the last is it boosts creativity. If you can inject fun and humor into the culture, like you were talking about, then it just boosts creativity. I think it was Walt Disney that said that laughter is the U.S.'s greatest export. I mean, and that's the reality. If you can create a culture that people are there comfortably, have fun, and know that they're respected for their time, and know that they're respected for their opinions, and it's not just that authoritative thing, then it makes it's going to make retention and hiring so much easier for companies.
Sure, because a lot of work is repetitive and monotonous, and although that doesn't mean it's not important, there is a certain sameness to every day in a lot of jobs. So what you can do, and by you I mean what the people responsible for the culture, for the atmosphere in an office environment, what you can do to break up that monotony, generally I think will lead to whether or not your company is successful, and probably whether or not you hold on to your job. So this sounds like a no-brainer. I don't know why it's so tough to do, and I don't know. They used to, when I was in school, maybe you were in school, they'd have the morning announcements, and there was always something funny that the principal would always say, or something that would make you chuckle, and it was something goofy or something. But you know what? You talked about it, a lot the rest of the day, and it kind of brought everybody back to, okay, let's get to what we're here for.
Exactly. And the same thing in business presentations. We've all sat through those, PowerPoint after PowerPoint, and the speaker that starts with humor and injects humor throughout, we pay attention to more. The ones that get up and talk about science and theory, we tune out pretty quickly, and nowadays they can look at their phone and they just tune out quickly. And you're right, we remember the ones that made us smile. We remember the moment as opposed to just remembering the slide that has a theory on top of it. So I think you're right. That humor just changes the tone of the day if you can make somebody smile.
Well, Michael Cupps, we won't delay you any longer. I know you want to get back to your stand-up act, but we appreciate your time here. And you're with ActiveOps. Just give me ActiveOps sounds like something where people are descending and rappelling from helicopters. What is ActiveOps?
Well, what we are is a software company that we provide solutions that allow that managers to have that transparency that we've just talked about, Ken. We give them the transparency into how their people are doing, both well-being and performance. And once you have those metrics, you can start those interventions one-on-one coaching sessions, the meetings, et cetera. And our data allows them to do that. We aggregate that data up so we can help companies with specific benchmarks around things like focus, well-being, performance, efficiency, and all of that stuff. But it's a great additive. So the part of what we talked about today, Ken, is really important, that managers need the data in order to make the right decision on when and how to do certain things. And without that data, they're just guessing, and the employees are guessing, and probably the employees are bored at home over that keyboard just hunched over. So intervening and making them laugh might be a good thing.
Yeah, Michael, good stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. I like what you have to say. Stay well. We need to hear your voice, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken, very much. Take care.